that I think are fascinating that have just been revealed to me over the last few years are about what the true fivefold is. And it's not what the average pastor will, like every pastor will say, oh, it's the apostles, prophets, pastors, teachers, and evangelists. And that's not the fivefold. The fivefold is actually a reference, and Yeshua would have understood it, and so would, and I'm sorry if anybody wants me to say Jesus and somebody wants me to say Yahusha, but I believe there's power in the name, and I'm feeling quite constricted at the moment because everybody likes it said a different way, and I don't want to feel restricted, so please don't be offended by how if I sometimes say Jesus, and if I sometimes say Yahusha, I sometimes say Yeshua. I'm trying to keep everybody happy because I'm not entirely convinced that any one way, I know Jesus isn't like, but I know the evidence isn't totally clear cut, and I don't want to be ostracized. You're always ostracizing one person if you go one direction, and that's not my heart.
Yeah, totally agree.
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
Wonderful, wonderful.
But basically, the fivefold is the Torah. It's the Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Because if you think about what the Torah was written on, it was written on a scroll. And we think of a scroll like a tight roll of wood chip wallpaper that you roll out and it wants to curl up again. But it was written on vellum, which was calfskin. And it would have been like this, and it would have unfolded. So you'd have had, this would have been a page. Then you had the fold. Then you had the next book. Then you had a fold. Then the next one. Just like when you go to a drapery shop and unroll the fabric. You never would have written on the folds because the folds crack when it's being rolled up each time. Is everything okay? Okay.
Sorry, I'm awfully sorry. I just realised my phone is behind Luke in that orange handbag and I haven't turned the thing off. It's press the button in on the third.
Okay. So you don't want to distract by your phone possibly?
No, I don't. I just realised.
Okay. So basically the fivefold, Yahusha, Yeshua, Saul would all have understood it was a reference to the Torah. We think of it as being the Pentateuch, and that means kind of 5 books. But they didn't have books in those days. They had scrolls. And the fivefold, as I say, was a reference to the blueprint that God had from the beginning of time of how he wanted his people to live right from Adam and Eve, to be living in harmony with him, walking in the cool of the day with him, okay? So that was the blueprint. And then when we have the reference to the pastors, apostles, prophets, teachers, and evangelists, they are like, okay, they are like the builders, the plasterers, the plumbers, the electricians, and carpenters who all come in, but they have to follow the blueprint that was there at the start. Okay? So when we talk about the fivefold, that's why so many of the churches are getting excited now about the fivefold ministries, but they don't know what to do with them. It's a case of, well, what do we think is a good idea? And every church is doing what is right in their own eyes. Yeah. Whereas if they maybe went back to see what was the original plan, what are the things which are Olam forever, it would certainly transform what our churches are today if they even took on board. I believe the things that have been revealed to me that I share are on the fivefold, the tribes, because they bring colour to it, and also just an understanding of Torah as being totally different, that Torah is not law. Torah is basically the Hebrew word for instructions and teachings. But everybody goes down the route of, well, if it's referring to God, then it's law with a capital L. Whereas when you look in Proverbs or any reference to a mother or a father teaching their child, it's the same word, Torah.
Loving instruction.
It's loving instruction, totally, absolutely. Now, I'm just going to tell you about 3 resources that I've got. Now, I've brought with me, this was the first book that I wrote, Discovering Hebrew Gold. And it's like a manual. Some people say, well, is everything in there not included in your next book? And yes, it is, but it's easy to find in here because I've basically gone through the Hebrew letters and I roughly do a page on every letter and what the meaning of the hieroglyphic is. And Victor still uses his anytime he's doing Bible study.
Sellotape them.
Now I know in a lot of circles, people prefer the Paleo Hebrew, and the Paleo Hebrew is wonderful because the pictograph or the hieroglyphic is more clear what it's referring to. But I have been trying to get people to look at online resources like Bible Hub, Blue Letter Bible, and to use those as a resource. And in order to do that, you need to be able to recognize the Ezra square script letters as well. So that's why when I've written my books, I've used this rather than the Paleo Hebrew in my first book. However, last year I brought out my second book, Codex. Okay, it's a play on words, Codex being the codices, the scroll that Torah was written on. And with this, I've basically written a whole chapter on each letter, and I've shown the Paleo Hebrew in it, along with the Ezra square script, and also the Latin letter, so you can see how where they've progressed in time, but there's an obvious audit trail there of where they've come from. So the Codex is £20, the Discovering Hebrew Gold is £7.50, and because it's a high Shabbat, I don't want to be selling on the Shabbat, so the books are all in there on the shelf at the far end, so if anybody's ever interested, come and see me, and books are there. And also, now I know this is controversial, and I don't want to be controversial, but on the other hand, I'm being controversial. Okay, right. Okay. Now Libby has been educating me for the last couple of years in the Zadok calendar, but I must confess that unless I can work something out for myself, I hold it at arm's length. And to some extent, I've been doing that until I could work things out for myself. And because I feel that responsibility, if you teach, you've got to be able to explain, even if you have to say, well, look, hang on, let me go away and look that up, and then I'll come back to you once I've got an answer. But and that's what I've done with the Zadok or Zedek calendar, as we call it. Victor's designed the front for it, and we were waiting patiently because we've got about 20 people back in Ireland who are wanting a copy of the calendar. So in the end, what I've done is I've done it myself. Okay. So basically it's A4 sides, and it's the 12 Kodesh months. What I've done differently to the calendar which Libby has is I've tried to show how when it's a leap year the days run slightly differently. So that shows that, and then on the back of the front cover I have written this little bit of blurb so that anybody, if they're wondering why we're running away from the other calendar, this is why I've tried to do it. Is it okay if I read this out to you just to give you an idea? Okay. Right, I'll throw it at arm's length. Okay,
Do you
sorry?
want their glasses?
Every day's a land.
No,
Sorry, love, can I make a... Is everybody warm enough? Just a practical.
Yes.
People putting in jackets, or everybody okay?
You shut the door if you want.
It is a little bit
Let's do
chilly.
it.
Roz, want to borrow those?
No. Actually, I've got a pair here if I want to put it. It's big enough print. Okay. Now this is a, yes, please.
I think it's a bit cool and
It is a bit chilly. Poor Ray is sitting there.
I'm happy to be cool. Like,
With his hood up.
That's cool.
Now, bear in mind, this was written at a very basic level because we have now started holding feasts for Pesach, Passover. We did that on the 2nd of April, and then on the 18th of September we did the Yom Teruah, Feast of Trumpets, and we also actually did on the 2nd of May, second Passover, down south with the ones down there who couldn't travel up to us, which was good. But anyway, so I'd say it's a fairly basic level, but I've just tried to be as succinct as I can. I've said fasting and feasting have become little more than lifestyle choices to many Christians. However, Leviticus 23 clearly describes certain feasts or appointed times as the feasts of Yahweh, not merely the feasts of the Jews, and they are olam, meaning that they are forever, for all time, for every generation, unto eternity. Following the Babylonian exile, the Jews who had been immersed in the Babylonian way of life adopted by default the Babylonian lunar calendar, which marks a new month when the new moon appears. The Hebrew word for month is Kodesh, whereas the word for moon is Yarek, a completely different word. Concordances are not dictionaries. Concordances do not assume any knowledge of Hebrew. They simply look at the context of a word to deduce its possible or probable meaning, making the observation that most post-exilic Jews now equate a new month with the timing of the new moon. We can see how Kodesh, meaning month, was awarded a second and erroneous meaning of new moon when the concordances were compiled. Exodus 12 verse 2 stipulates that the new the new year should begin 14 days before the Pesach or Passover. In fact, Moshe may have been observing the huge hordes of people who marked the spring equinox at the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt when he heard these words. Most Jews consider the new year to begin in September with Rosh Hashanah, but once again this date is not biblical. In fact, Rosh Hashanah was created by the Jews to celebrate their release from the Babylonian exile,
That's right.
but not the Babylonian way of thinking. They didn't escape that. 12 represents God's order. There were 12 tribes, 12 disciples. The New Jerusalem will have 12 foundations, and 12 represents God's governance. Esther prepared for 12 months to meet King Xerxes. There were 12 groups of temple guards and 12 groups of worshippers responsible for protecting the temple and maintaining the worship. Never any mention of a 13th month or group for a leap year. The Babylonian calendar is messy in that it takes 19 years to run full cycle and requires a 13th leap month every 2 to 3 years in order to keep roughly in sync with the seasons. God is a God of order, and the one who holds the stars and galaxies in his hands did not plan for us to follow a pagan Babylonian system, particularly one that names one of its months after the pagan god Tammuz, the hollow idol which wept tears when the soft lead that was placed in the eye cavities began to melt under high temperature. See Ezekiel 8:14. Matthew 25 verses 1 to 13 relates the parable of the 10 virgins or bridesmaids who were ill prepared when the bridegroom returned for his bride. Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets, looks towards the time when Yeshua will return for his bride. But can we say with any confidence that the bridesmaids, those with the responsibility for preparing the bride, are ready with lamps full of oil? In many prophetic circles, the number 5 represents grace. To someone with a Hebraic mindset, however, 5 represents the fivefold blueprint for mankind as revealed in the Torah, also known as the Pentateuch. So when we look at this parable, it might be prudent to consider whether it would be more foolish to be expectant, i.e. no Torah, including the appointed times listed in Torah, in the Leviticus 23, but have no oil, or be full of expectation and have access to oil, yet have no appreciation of God's instructions, literally meaning of Torah, whereby ignoring the shofars when they are blown. And that's why it is important to be in line with God's timings. And the church has no idea what the feasts even are, which is sad. We're endeavouring to follow the ancient paths, the biblical calendar, in the hope that we may be ready to witness his story as it continues to be revealed. Tzedek, often translated as Zadok, is the Hebrew word for righteous. This Tzedek calendar was discovered at Qumran among the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it reveals a simple calendar in accordance with the biblical system of 12 months, named Kodesh, or month 1, month 2, month 3, just as the days of the week were referred to as day 1, day 2, and day 3, not honouring the names of Roman generals, July and August, or gods such as Janus or Juno. We are not attempting to form a new world system. We are simply trying to ensure that the bride is ready for the groom when he returns within his times and seasons. So that's what I've written on the back of it, and hope that it's of use. And as I say, it's a very simple calendar to put together, and that copy is actually for Libby. So.
Love that.
Roz,
Thank you
I
very
just
much.
had a comment to make. These were handed out at class. I'm in Roz's class in Belfast, and following the count, I was looking, I was praying and reading about this morning. 15th day, the 2nd of October, and refers to the day of Sukkot, High Holy Sabbath, Leviticus 23, 33 to 36. So if I may, I just want to read it, just a couple of lines. I'm here in Leviticus 23, and it's 23 to 26. And Adonai said to Moshe, I'm reading from the Complete Jewish Bible, tell the people of Israel that in the 7th month, and that's, we're here now, where Roz has specified in the calendar, the first of the month is to be for you a day of complete rest for remembering the Holy Convocation, announced with blasts of shofar, which we've heard this morning. Do not do any kind of ordinary work and bring an offering made by fire to Adonai. And that's specifically, Adonai said to Moshe, the 10th day of this month, that's going on. The 10th day was Yom Kippur. You are to have a holy convocation and you are to deny yourself and bring an offering made by fire to Adonai. You're not to do any kind of work on that day because it is Yom Kippur. That was Yom Kippur, to make atonement for you before Adonai your God. So this specifically outlines the 15th day, which is the 2nd of October. The High Holy Day, Shabbat, Leviticus 23, 33 to 36. So it's actually written here, and we're right on the timeline in this day of our Lord. Just to reiterate that,
Thank you.
I think it's important right now.
It is.
Now, I've kind of given the game away by reading that out to you. I hadn't thought that through. It's a bit like telling a joke, but you tell them what the punchline is before you tell the joke.
I do that
So-
all the time, darling.
But I'm going to do like a little icebreaker with you before we get on to this, and we will get there eventually, I promise. It's the difference between concordances and dictionaries, okay? And it's something that's really only kind of I've become totally aware of over the last month. And I've done a couple of exercises with groups, and most people, when in churches anyway, if you ask them where do they go when you come across a new word, and they say of course a dictionary, but when it's something to do with the Bible and you ask them, they say a concordance, and a concordance and a dictionary are not the same thing. So we're going to do a little exercise together just to see, and I like every time I do this exercise I have to come up with another new word that hopefully nobody's ever heard of, because Victor cannot hold his own water. And he always calls out the answer whenever I'm trying to get people to think, and he doesn't give them time to think. But I'm just going to warn you, Victor, and this is from class. If I was in class with Victor, he is not the one I would ever be copying his answers.
Darling!
Did you bring your naughty corner, Tom?
I thought about bringing my
college-
naughty corner, but I didn't.
The college has actually purchased for him a little sign that says naughty corner that he
Naughty
can put above his desk, because normally I'm sending him away to the naughty corner. Okay, so I'm
Bring joy,
going
darling.
to tell you a word, and I'm hoping that none of you have ever come across it. And as a matter of interest, if any of you do know the word, please let me know, but don't tell everybody what the word is, okay? So this word is mumpsimus. Is anybody familiar with the word mumpsimus?
Is that a Hebrew word?
No.
Doesn't sound
And
Hebrew at all.
don't you dare look up your phone
Say it
while I'm
again.
talking. And there's no cheating going on today. The word
Say
is
it again, Roz.
mumpsimus. M-U-M-P. It's basically mumps. I-M-U-S.
What
Okay.
language?
And sorry,
What language is it?
English.
Oh,
It's an English word.
sorry.
Mumpsimus. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you, if nobody knows what it means, I'm going to give you two clues. I am going to give you two sentences with context, which is what basically the concordance does. I'm going to give you two sentences, and I want you to call out what you think it might mean from this. And you'll spoil it if you look it up on your phone or whatever.
You won't learn anything.
You won't learn anything. I want you the lesson to be that you can't always work out what a word
Yes.
means from the context, okay? So the first clue is this sentence. Well, it's two sentences. Generally speaking, it is better to catch mumps and chickenpox when we are young, as the symptoms are less severe. Mumpsimus, however, affects the elderly more acutely, and the young show little sympathy. I'll read it out a second time. Generally speaking, it is better to catch the mumps and chickenpox when we are young, as the symptoms are less severe. Mumpsimus, however, affects the elderly more acutely, and the young show little sympathy. What do you think mumpsimus is?
I got an idea, but do you want me to say it or keep
Yeah,
it again?
tell me.
Shingles.
Shingles? Okay, thank you. So it's some sort of illness. Okay, thank you. That would make sense, wouldn't it? Because if you've had mumps when you're a child and
Dementia.
yeah. Okay, could be
It's
dementia.
against sickness, but I think
I
it's
think
something.
it's a blindness you have when you're young.
Okay.
You can't see things and perceive things correctly.
Okay.
I think maybe it's some kind of behaviour, like elderly or older people think that they know everything, so they're free to share it, something like that.
Okay. There are certainly a lot of grains of truth in everything that's been said. Does anybody else have any more words they want to throw out that it could be? And then I'll read out a second sentence and see if that makes it any clearer. Okay. Right. Clue number 2. Now this is actually a true thing, a true event I'm now referring to. It's where the word came from, but I still don't think it helps much. When corrected on his misquotation of the Latin text, the illiterate priest announced, "I will not change my old Mumpsimus for your new Sumpsimus."
Habits.
You think it's a habit? Okay.
Something that sounds like assumption.
Doesn't it?
Connected to
Assuming
assumptions.
things.
Okay, and doesn't it sound like a Sumpsimus is less than a Mumpsimus? A Mumpsimus is better, and a Sumpsimus is just an assumption. Wouldn't you think? But like this is what happened when the priests tried to translate the Hebrew. They didn't know what the words meant. They had to look within context and see. That's why when you go to a concordance, there's maybe 30 words listed, because like a concordance is a good scientific way of doing something, get all the evidence together, but it can then create confusion to the average minister coming along or the average Christian looking up a word, trying to work out what does it mean. Yes, you end up cherry picking to try and get it to fit your context, but you have no
That's right.
firm ground to stand
Everyone does
on.
that.
Okay, which is why my passion is for teaching Hebrew and the Hebrew letters, because it's purely holding up. If you understand what the 22 letters mean, then you are coming at it with a clear mind of, right, okay, if I know that Aleph means an ox in the physical sense, but it's a reference to strength, something stronger than what I am, a strength outside of myself, then every time you come to a word that has that as a root letter, then the strength of something is important in the word. And the letter bait is the letter that means a tent or a home or a house. So an aleph bait is quite simply the strength of the home. And that's why it can be the father, or it can be the main tent pole that holds the tent up. It's the strength of the house. But you can see how these things
Like Peter
grow
was a
up.
pillar.
Yes, yes.
And in that context, then, Aleph or Tab leads to outworking of the Mumpsimus.
Mm-hmm. Right, now I'm going to explain what the answer is. Okay, now this will hopefully make sense now. Now the answer is Mumpsimus, and I think you were actually one of the first ones to spot it. Mumpsimus, and sorry, Ray, thank you. If you hadn't said shingles, I was hoping somebody would say that, because and the average person will think Mumpsimus have something to do with mumps and illness, and that's what I was trying to lead you down. So
The
you
fact
did.
you mentioned measles
You
and
went-
the thing, that's
that was-
only why.
That was why I was
And don't
trying
know
to
any young
lead you
people
down
that
that
say, "I
track.
call that only older people." So.
No, I'm pleased that you took the bait, because I would have been so disappointed if nobody had taken the bait.
Yes.
So thank you. Now, Mumpsimus it's an interesting word, and I think you'll all start embracing it. Mumpsimus signifies an obstinate adherence to an error, because we prefer to do or say things the way we've always done. Okay? Sumpsimus, on the other hand, refers to the use of a correct term or practice in place of the popular but incorrect one. Okay, I'll give you an example of it. The use of octopuses to describe multiple octopus is a sumpsimus. It's the correct one because it is the correct term, in place of the popular but grammatically incorrect octopi. So that's just an example of it.
That's a good pub
So,
quiz.
so you've learnt something today, okay? But you see what I'm saying about, and with a concordance, concordances were formed by scientifically looking at every reference to the word, and then they try and lump them together and say, right, okay, so with the word Torah, they acknowledge that it's used as instruction, and it's referring to children and parents, and then they suddenly say, oh, but when it's divine Torah, it's law with a capital L. And it's impossible to translate the Bible. Nobody can do it without imposing their own theology onto it. And
All
you
of the
can
bias.
see, yeah, totally. And that's why the word Torah is such a dirty word today in the church. And yet it's the manufacturer's instructions, it's the blueprint for what we should be
The
following.
thing I love about the Paleo Hebrew, because when you actually look at it and try and look at any word you like in almost any language and you shine the Torah on it,
Yes.
well, there's no wrong word, you shine the Paleo Hebrew language on it, it's like shining a torch on a dark room. You go,
Yeah.
wow, does it really mean that? It's an amazing language.
I
It says what it means.
I totally agree. And if I'm in an environment where I'm teaching a college, or if I'm invited along to a church to do a series, then I will use the Paleo and also the Ezra Square script. I will use both. But more often than not, if I only am doing one meeting, then I have to just use the Square script and try and get them to see how it looks like what it's supposed to be. But we will come back to that later. We better get into the tribes. It's 10 to 12. Okay, right.
That was only the introduction, by the way.
That was only the
You're
introduction.
not stuck for time. Ross,
just-
you're not stuck for
okay.
time. We are
Just
listening
quickly,
and we
could you
are
read us
interested.
the original sentences with it now that we know what it means?
Yes.
Please.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it'll
You
really drive your point home.
Okay, right. It's just I was doing my best to try and throw you all.
Don't be stuck.
You're too cunning,
Don't be
you're
stuck
too
for
cunning.
time, Ross.
So the
Go.
first clue I gave was, generally speaking, it is better to catch mumps and chicken pox when we are young, as the symptoms are less severe. Now that was just a red herring, okay? Mumpsimus, however, affects the elderly more acutely, and the young show little sympathy. The young always know what's better, and the elderly always seem to do things their own way because they may have been told that's not the right way, but I prefer to do it this way. So that's what I was getting
That's
at.
really
And-
interesting, that is.
Okay.
Oh boy. I know exactly what you're
Okay.
talking
A
So
lot
that-
of old people in this room.
So that was a red herring, that one. Okay, and then clue number 2 was, when corrected on his misquotation of the Latin text, the illiterate priest announced, "I will not change my old Mumpsimus for your new Sumpsimus."
Oh.
Now, the situation... I think we have things out. The situation it's actually referring to, and I believe this is where the word came from, there was a priest, a Roman Catholic priest, and he was reading a Latin text. Now, I don't know whether it was the Vulgate or whether it was a book or whatever written by one of the early church fathers, but in it, it referred to a woman who was a leader in the church, and he didn't like it, so he misquoted it every time he read it to be a man instead of a woman, and that was where the word originally came from. So,
Praise our King.
and that's not the reason I picked it. It was
Mum's
purely
the word.
that I'm running out of words that Victor and
Maximus.
yeah, the last one
Was that Juno?
was what you know.
Juno, was it the woman?
I don't know. I'm not sure who it was.
Yeah. I
So
know
it
what
sounds
you're
very familiar. They
I
had a
know what
problem
you're
that
talking about.
they had a problem with being a woman, so that's
Yeah.
gotta be a man. It's gotta be a man. No woman could be in the
Right.
congregation.
I have a feeling it was actually referring to one of the women in the early church.
Yes.
I think it was
Juno.
referring to, yeah.
So it's,
Yeah. So,
Was it not the two people on the road to Emmaus?
mm,
Yes.
Matter.
Two people on the
Just
road
an
to
example.
Emmaus.
no, it's Juno, but they didn't want to accept a woman could lead. And
Moving on.
Shamash. Anyway.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Right, okay. So we're going to go into calling the tribes. I've written up some basic. Okay, right, okay. You all probably know this. This was a presentation I put together before. So Hebrew is read from right to left. Apologies for the white squares, but it was better than having the brickwork coming through. There are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, and every letter is hieroglyphic, and the letters contain the meaning of the root words. It can also be significant to note when a particular letter is first used in the Old Testament. I'm just thinking, that was all I was just going to say, those things. Okay, so just to give you an example, the word aleph means ox, and it represents power. But I would say it actually is more than that. It represents power outside of ourselves. Because if you were to go to the average young guy today and say, right, show me what strength is, he'll start flexing his muscles and doing these sort of things. And we are very, generally in society, we're aware of our strength, but not aware of our weakness and our need for a strength outside of ourselves. And that's what this Aleph represents. So like if you were a crofter living in Donegal, you would have had a donkey or a cow or something, so you had a bit of might outside of yourself, because you probably wouldn't have owned a tractor. And then the letter Beit means tent, and it represents the home, and it also represents the family. It's basically elaborating on the place where you are, the place where you are comfortable. And our English word bed comes from Beit. It's the place where you go at night time and lie down. So the word Aleph, Beit, or Ab means the strength or the power of the home, i.e. the father. Okay? And as I said, it can also mean the main tent pole, which is the strength of the tent that keeps the tent standing.
If I can remind us that one of the faces of the 4 living creatures is an ox.
Right. Okay.
So that leading to what you're saying, the strength around the throne.
Okay, yes.
It's not just, oh look, there's a cow, there's a chicken, there's a hen.
Yeah.
It's significant.
Yes.
There's an ox, there's one of the creature's faces.
Yeah, thank you. Right. Calling the tribes. I've actually subtitled it Being of One Accord. And it's a bit of a play on, I like plays on words, I love words and etymology and those sort of things. The reason I wrote Being of One Accord is you will find that rope making is a very important idea in Hebrew culture. Okay, here is somebody basket weaving. Basket weaving and rope making are not that far removed from one another, because you need to have strong fingers, and you're teasing the reeds and softening them or plaiting them together to get strength, so that you're making something useful out of something which is very cheap and could be easily found. Okay, now basket making is probably one of the oldest crafts known to mankind. The materials are cheap and readily available, and the end result isn't highly sought after. However, if you happen to go into the garage and you're in for a loaf of bread, and then you pick up a packet of cheese and some crisps and a bar of chocolate and then a few yogurts and a few other things, suddenly a basket is the most valuable thing in the world to you, because otherwise you're going to drop that glass jar or whatever. And suddenly it becomes valuable. And the Hebrew letter Tet is the picture of a basket. Okay, it's the picture of a basket, but it's also the picture of a clay pot. And Tet represents mankind. We're formed out of, from dust you came, to dust you shall return. Where apparently there's a small amount of gold in every person, and there's carbon. I think it's maybe, is it 5% carbon? But by and large, there isn't an awful lot of value in our bodies. However, when we are in the right place at the right time, that we can be used by God, suddenly we have value and worth. And that is the story. Sorry?
Vessels of honor.
Yes, that is the story behind the letter Tet. And you can see there, it looks a little bit like a basket. Now, the Paleo Hebrew letter is basically a round circle with an X across it. And it looks almost like a basket. You can get that illusion from it. So a Tet is an everyday object perfectly positioned to serve. Its value comes from its usefulness by being available when it is needed. Tet is the everyday woven basket, the clay vessel. The materials of themselves are of little value, but when they are available, when they are needed, they become very valuable. When we work together, we can achieve something extremely useful for the kingdom.
Amen.
Now, the letter Tet first appears in Genesis 1 verse 4. Elohim et haor ki tov. God, the light, that it was good. Basically, God saw the light, that it was good. And that second word in 853 Aleph Tav is written according to Strong's, the untranslatable sign of the accusative, and it's not. It is like God took a highlighter pen and put it the whole way through the Old Testament and put it in front of certain things which are accusative, which were part of his redemption plan. And it's amazing. You see the letters Aleph Tav in front of Esau's name until he sold his birthright, and then it moves to becoming in front of Yaakov's name. things like that, and it's just like a highlighter pen, and yet it's the untranslatable sign of the accusative. It occurs like 11,099 times, something like that.
Why
But like-
do you know it's 11,900?
I don't know because I've looked it up so many times, and
Yes, it took 3 days.
it's something like that. I spent 3 days. God just led me a couple of years ago to look up Aleph Tav, and I went through every incident of it to make sure that there were no things that fell outside of it. And it is incredible how it consistently goes through the Aleph being God, representing God the Father, the power, the great strength, the supreme strength outside of ourselves, and the Tav, the sign of the covenant, and the whole way through. And so Yeshua, he didn't speak Greek. He spoke an ancient Babylon or an ancient Aramaic form of Galilean form of Aramaic. Sorry, the other way around. And he would have had people, scribes, who could have written in Greek, the trade language, but he never said, I am the Alpha and the Omega. He said, I am the Aleph and the Tav.
Come on.
And that was a reference to this word that nobody translates, that goes the whole way through the entire Old Testament.
So when Yeshua said that,
Uh-huh.
was he saying in effect, because if he's the covenant,
Uh-huh.
was he saying in effect that me and my Father are echad, united?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
By saying, he will carry the name of the Father, and his name shall be called the Almighty, the Father.
Totally.
So he carried the name
Yes.
of the Father.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So he wasn't, I don't want to get,
Uh-huh.
he wasn't the Father,
Mhm.
but he carried that name.
Yeah, he absolutely carried it.
Okay.
Have you
Absolutely.
come across the Messianic Aleph Tav scriptures? The
Yes,
Bible?
yes.
Got that?
Yeah,
It's a wonderful
yeah.
resource.
Victor got me a copy of it last year for Christmas.
It's thick.
It's
but
very
it's
thick.
awesome.
Yes, yes.
Thick, indeed.
Okay. Yeah, so this is the word tov here. So it's significant always the first time that any of the Hebrew letters appear, and it appears here as it was good, and it's a reference to, it was a reference to man, this basket, this tet, whereas he is the aleph, we are the basket. Victor, he'd set an alarm to make sure he didn't forget to go up and check on Mum. Okay, he will be back.
Would you, in your definitive opinion, is that what it really means? Good.
No,
Right.
no, but we will come.
Gary,
Well spotted.
Gary, could you manage when to speak? Stop upside, please.
Yeah. I'll keep you in mind. Yeah.
I'm
I always thought to go the other way. Voices too loud.
We will go through discussions like that, but I want to keep a certain amount of momentum going
Yes.
of what I'm explaining.
Exactly.
But if you want to make a note of it, we can certainly. Yeah.
I'll highlight it so you bring it up.
Thank you. Okay. Here is some rope making. I love just to reiterate the fact that rope making is an important concept. One of my favorite verses is Isaiah 40:31. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall rise up on wings like eagles. Okay. Now the Hebrew word for waiting is the word kava. Okay. Now we kind of have this idea of waiting upon the Lord means you're kind of waiting and you're watching your watch and you're thinking, right, what can I do to fill the time in until the Lord needs me for something? But rope making is a very concentrated thing that you do. Nobody makes rope like crocheting or knitting a jumper in the hope that somebody needs a knitted square at some point, or somebody's going to have a baby and want a matinee coat. Rope making, you have either a post on the wall with a ring on it that you can attach something to, or you have something heavy that you can attach the end, and you are pulling it intentionally, and you are basically pulling to ensure that the plaited ropes are being pulled together, and you are turning something which is like fine hairs that could easily be snapped into something that is extremely strong, that you can climb a wall with it, you can go fishing, you can make nets out of it. If you are building a building, you have 2 points in the ground and you connect them with a rope, and there you have a straight line. These are all things. You could get a plumb line. You know, when you're hanging wallpaper, not that they regularly hung wallpaper in their tents, but you get the point that a rope is a very simple thing, but you need to have rope when you need a rope. There's no point saying, oh, but I know how to make the prettiest. I won the award for the Northern Ireland Rope Maker of the Year 2015. There's no point having a reputation for being a good rope maker if you don't have one ready when you've got your sheep's fallen down the side of the mountain or somebody needs to get back into the boat. You need a rope to be available for you there and then. So this, they that wait upon, they that are making rope, are keeping in tension with the Father, focused on the Father, and are actually ready and prepared for whenever the time comes. Now that's actually another interesting, I alluded earlier to the fivefold. There's something very significant in the Hebrew alphabet. 5 of the letters actually represent the 5 pastor, apostle, evangelist. Yeah, and but then we may have a time at some point over the next week to actually look at that. But also, rope making is essential for each of the fivefold, because you can't go fishing without a fishing net or a fishing rope. You can't be an apostle and building and planning to move forward a heavy object. In fact, I don't know if any of you have seen, there was a documentary on TV last year, and it was Easter Island, and they were trying to work out how they had moved those big statues from one side of the island to the other, and they were working on it for about 2 weeks, and they'd almost given up hope on managing to do it, and then they managed it eventually. I'm just trying to see if there's anything here that I wasn't planning to show you this. All right, use this. Okay, what they did was, if you imagine this was a statue on Easter Island, big head on the top, shoulders, and then the body below. What they did was they got rope, and they attached it round it, and they got it to slightly lean forward, and then one side pulled one way, and the other side pulled the other, and it walked itself, and it actually eventually created its own momentum that they were hardly having to do anything.
I've done that.
And they, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
You know the big pillars that you get on driveways in the big Victorian houses?
Mm-hmm.
With the past, well, he was the minister, John.
Mm-hmm.
And we were moving it, and I said, how on earth are you going to move that? I'll show you that. That's what he did.
And it works.
Honestly,
It
I
works.
was fascinated by it.
But on that
Rocked it back and forth. We weighed all of 4 tons. Massive pillar.
But on the back of that, it's vital is balance, because we need the balance in the body ratio. Because if you lose that center balance, it goes boom, and it's destructive. Then, because I'm moving,
and you don't, and you can't have one side pulling harder than the other side. Otherwise, it's going to end up going in a circle.
train,
You're not going
work,
anywhere.
know each other by the Spirit,
Yes.
know who you labour with.
Yes, amen.
Yes, but also when you know who you labour with, then you also have the teams appropriately, that you've got strength where it needs to have strength, and you've also got those who are willing to be pliable and as well to supply support. And this is all part of the apostolic.
Yeah.
But again, you need to have the ropes in order to start moving forward.
Hence, Peter, I will make you a fisher of
Yes.
men.
Yeah.
Yes.
Something else too that I think, as you were speaking, you don't put an ox and a donkey
No.
to go
Together.
ploughing together.
No.
Because one's got the short legs, one's got the long legs.
Yes.
And the other thing, as you were speaking about this with the rope, it reminded me very much of you said about putting it, fastening the top end
Mm-hmm.
and making the zit-zits.
Yes. 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 Uh-huh. And the zit-zits are reminders.
Yeah.
And if you don't have reminders, it's so easy to get preoccupied with everything else that's making demands upon you. Yeah, yeah. So, several of the tribes, this is kind of what I'm coming round to, several of the tribes take their names from rope making ideas. Okay, so you've got Asher. Asher takes its name from the root word shar, which is shin resh, meaning to pull with pressure on strands of rope to create a strong cord. And it's funny because we kind of have this idea of Asher, because there's the Asher bakery we have over in Northern Ireland, which was on the news because they refused to make the wedding cake for the people. So people always tend to think of Asher, they're the ones who have lots of fine wine and bread and things like that. Everybody wants to invite them to the party. But they are only able to offer hospitality because they've done all the hard donkey work in the kitchen ahead of time, like chopping vegetables and washing up and making sure that the plates are ready for the next meal. These are hard work that doesn't get all the glory. Maybe whoever seasons the thing gets the glory because the thing tastes nice. But this is hard work going on in the background. So Asher is actually from Shin Resh. Shin is the Hebrew letter. It's the is the teeth. It's pressure. Okay, and Resh is the Hebrew letter for thinking. The back of the head is the head. So it's pressure on the head, meaning to pull with pressure on the strands of rope to create a strong cord. And it actually creates a strong mindset. Because when you think about the tribe of Asher, the area of land they were given was prime for growing grapes and growing corn or barley and things like that.
Oil.
But yes, and oil. But there's no point in having them sitting, falling off the trees, ripe, unless you're going to go and gather them and then harvest them. You've got to be prepared for hard work if you're going to be taking up the mantle of what has been entrusted with you. Okay? Now,
So just, are you okay if you ask the relevant questions along the way? You're not losing momentum. Are you?
we are losing momentum
Okay.
a little bit, okay? But if it's just a weak comment that adds to it, then it's fine, okay? Now, Naphtali takes its name from the word tal, meaning to twist rope, as in there being a twist in the tail. A knot or a riddle that catches a person out and gets their attention. I love a twist in the tail because there's nothing worse than knowing where somebody's going. You want to be surprised, and like often in church, the church I used to go to, the minister was a very good evangelist because you often were thinking, where on earth is he going with this? But it meant people put their guard down and then they were ready for the kill when he then kind of did the evangelistic message coming out of it. But Naphtali, as I say, it's a rope making thing. But then when you have a catch, it's a bit like if you're on a boat when you're counting the knots as to work out the speed. The knots in the rope can be useful. It's not just a problem if you've got a knot in a rope and it's all tied up in knots. Sometimes knots are useful. If you don't have a knot at the end of the rope and you're swinging on it, you're just going to go whee, and you're going to have burnt hands. And you are going to fall off the end of the rope. You need there to be a knot in the rope, something to keep you there. Okay. Now the term Levi means to join together. The tribe of Levi did not inherit a portion of the land, but they were called to protect the tabernacle and God's presence, and they ensured that the tribes remained tightly bound to God and with one another. That was their position. Now with what we've been doing with the tribes. With Aaron's Destiny Hub, we haven't formed a tribe of Levi. We actually had the leaders of the tribes as being Levi, okay, even though they weren't part of their tribes. But what we did was we had the tribes which actually took the promised land. So we didn't include Levi among them, but I've included them here just so you can see that that is another word that is connected to the whole idea of rope making. As I say, rope making is a very important idea. Then the word shuv means to return, but it also means to weave and to recover. And it comes from the root letters shin and beit. Shin is to put pressure upon something. Now, for anybody who is already into Hebrew and is familiar with the fact that shin means to put pressure on something, this is just an observation that I've made and I've written about it in both books. If shin is at the beginning of a word, it means putting pressure on in the idea of a chaotic situation or when you're feeling hard pressed, okay? However, when shin is at the end of a word, it usually means transformation. Because when you think about your teeth or esh, which is a word for fire, if you have a piece of meat or an egg or a potato and you want to eat the raw meat, the raw egg, the raw potato, you need to add heat to it to change what it's like. Or you need, if you've got a boiled egg and a piece of cooked meat or a cooked potato, you need to chew on it in order to be able to make it something that you're able to swallow. Okay, so the pressure is there in the teeth or in the fire to change the consistency of the meat or the egg or the potato. However, when shin is at the end of the word, I believe it means transformation that comes out of it. It's change, because the Hebrew word shinui means to change something. So, as I say, shin, I've put it up here. Shin is to put pressure upon something when it's at the start of a word, but if it's at the end of the word, I believe it means transformation that has been brought about because you've been under pressure or because of something that's
Like
happened.
grapes and wine.
Sorry?
Like grapes and wine.
Yeah.
Under pressure.
Yeah.
Grain and flour.
Yeah.
But
But it becomes different when it's the other side.
Yes.
Okay? But there's like you could be sitting here in a room like this just debating one Hebrew letter for hours and getting so much richness out of it. Okay?
Elohim's a consuming fire.
Totally.
Shin al Shaddai.
Yeah, yeah. So bait is the tent or the home. So shin bait, put them together, and it's to pull together to create a home. That is what it is to weave. It's to return to the home. It's to recover. But from this root is where we get the word Shabbat. It's basically to return to the Tav, to return to covenant. That's the meaning of the word Shabbat. It's good, isn't it?
I'm itching to say something
Right.
because I did a teaching on Sabbath
Mm-hmm.
versus Shabbat.
Mm-hmm.
Why was it important for the Western world to change the word?
Yeah.
Could have just taken it.
Yeah.
And it's when you go into the root meanings, Semech
Yes.
is not Shin.
No.
But I'll leave it. I
Yes.
want to go in. Please continue.
Yeah.
Momentum.
Thank you. Okay. So, like Israel has, if you've been to Israel, you notice that the side of their vans, it says Shin Beit. And Israel's Shin Beit harnesses the power of generative AI to counter security threats. That's on one of their websites. But basically, Shin Beit, to return, to weave, to recover. The idea is they're pulling together. The Shin Beit is the security force out in Israel. They pull together to create a safe homeland. That's why they've chosen those two letters for them. And there's Shin Beit Tav. Shin Beit is to return, Tav the covenant. So Shin Beit Tav is
And
Shabbat.
Sabbath there, if I may add.
Yes, that is.
You know that I've mentioned it before, that the word Abba is
Mhm.
in the right slap in the middle of the word of the Shabbat.
Yeah.
Abba.
Well, I don't see that. Where is that?
Shabbat. What's word Shabbat? Shabbat. Abba.
You see, it's the SH Abba T. Okay.
But is that in the Hebrew that? Was that just our pronunciation, the Abba in the middle?
No, that is just something that Jacinta has noticed.
Okay, all right.
Sorry?
Pronunciation of how you pronounce it.
Yes.
It's not there in the word.
No,
It's
No.
just
no, it's not
Yeah.
there. It's just something that you
Shabbat.
noticed.
Yeah.
Abba.
Abba.
Shab.
Yeah. Okay. So it's to return to God's blueprint, His master plan. So this, as I say, is a Celtic knot, and it's rather grey. And the elaborate practice of making Celtic knots dates back to 2500 BC, around the time of the flood, when Noah's sons were tasked to go forth and multiply, which would have been around 2348 BC. Chebar, to be joined or united with another person or people, is also translated as tying a magic knot or a spell over another person. And it's found in Deuteronomy 18 verse 11, the one who conjures a spell. Okay, so you can see why some people don't like the idea of... Can you just close the door there, maybe?
Brother, can you close the door, please? No, I'll do it.
Super quick.
Thank you. Sorry? Yeah.
She's super quick.
Sorry.
With the make.
Yeah, I'm
Right,
talking, but
okay.
just doing.
Keep pressing in, sister.
Okay, right. Now, so it isn't hard to see how Celtic knot is still associated with weddings where the couple's hands are joined together as they're united together.
And witchcraft.
Yes, but it wasn't originally meant
But
to
there's
be
always
that
going to
way.
be the coward, there's always
Yes.
going to be the enemy.
The enemy is always going to come in and try
Always,
and twist
always,
things.
always.
Okay, and literally twist things
Always,
when we're
always.
talking about this. Okay. So Chebar is the same word is used to refer to the allies who fought alongside one another and formed an alliance, such as in Genesis 14 verse 3. So it's not always a negative context for the word. Okay. Now this grey Celtic knot is pretty much a picture of the church today. It has become quite sterile and lacking in colour. It is strong in some areas, but there are gaping holes in other places. It is far from fit for purpose, and we have become like a piece of woven tapestry where stitches were dropped hundreds of years ago, and there are gaping holes where no one took the time to stop and unravel or unpick, to the stage where the church has forgotten those original patterns and colours. Okay. This, on the other hand, It can be hard to introduce colour or to celebrate diversity within the church as we've become so familiar with dampening down vibrancy and life and colour for fear that it will become a distraction. But the concept of bringing back the elements of the tribes will bring colour and life and kingdom to the church.
Absolutely.
And the more people, and like you don't see it so much there, but this next slide, you can see where it's harder to see where the joins are because the holes are covered up, but one colour, like, where's the pointer? Let's give him a pointer. Let's hold it at the back. Okay, do you see there where the grey colour, the brown or the orange, the yellow comes into purple? And then over here you've got the blue coming into the purple. You see where the colours merge together, and here you've got the lighter colour and the yellows and oranges coming into the greens. Like, the more people embrace the idea of the tribes, they can show their true colour, but they can also merge with other people and not feel they're standing out like a sore thumb. But it means you can stand up and be counted and not be worrying, are they thinking, who does she think she is? And all I'm doing is I'm excited what God's revealed to me and I want to share it with other people. And it's not for a reputation or anything like that. And that's why I'm more than happy for people to take any of my material and use it. And anything you think is too complicated or not truth, then just toss it by the wayside and let me know if you think something isn't right, and then I can then revisit something, because there's things that I've even put in the first book that I wouldn't have put in that way now, because I now my thinking has developed as time has gone on. But we're all learning.
Yeah.
So, and as the elements which make each tribe unique become more integrated, then there will be strength and resilience once again, and the focus will become less on the individual elements, chords, tribes, but on the whole body, the whole kingdom, the bride. And as I say, God showed me a picture of a 12-strand Celtic knot, and it represented the 12 tribes of Israel. And the 12-strand knot was the base of a large basket. I should have brought the basket with me. It was an unusual, it's almost like a lobster pot. And the sides come up with the supports, but there's only a certain amount of weaving up one side and a certain amount of weaving up another side, and then a bit up here. They come up like triangles, which means if you've got large objects, you can carry them in the basket. But if you've got sand or small stuff, it's all going to come up to the first third, and then it's all going to start pouring out the sides. We need to be building on this basis of the tribes upwards till we've got a strong structure that is the bride, that is going to move forward. Yeah, and I saw that the basket was being made fit for purpose, and that was the basket, but I haven't got it here today. I've got any questions, but does anybody have any questions, or can we move on? What time is lunch? Okay.
There's a lot to absorb here.
Okay. Right, I'm going to start going now through the names of the tribes, okay? Okay, the first one is Judah, or Yehuda. And Yehuda basically is the only tribe name, in fact the only name in the Old Testament which contains the letters Yod He Vav He, or Yahweh, but it's got a Daleth there in the middle. And the letter Daleth, which is unfortunate that it's just on top of the join, it may not be so clear. I should have one here. Dalet. There's a Dalet. That's what a Dalet looks like. Okay. And a Dalet is a doorway, okay? So the name Yehuda, or the tribe of Yehuda, is a doorway into Yahweh. And we all know who the door is. And what tribe was Yeshua from? Yehuda, Judah, yeah. Like, there's so many layers here. The root of the word Yehuda is Yod Dalet. Yod is the hand of God. It's the smallest Hebrew letter. It represents the hand of God. It can represent, in a positive light, divine intervention. But if you're somebody who's scared of God, and then you're terrified of divine retribution. It's that sort of idea.
When you say the smallest, what do you mean the smallest?
It's almost like an apostrophe. You can see there, it's beside the...
like a comma.
It's like a comma or an apostrophe up high. You see there? It's the smallest Hebrew letter. All of the other ones are at least the size of that Dalet.
So that speaks to me of humility.
Yeah.
In
But
his name.
well, when I look at it, I always think of the verse with Elijah whenever they saw a cloud the size of a man's fist. You kind of imagine God's hand as being reaching down, suddenly bringing rain. Okay, and then the Dalit is the doorway, the opening, the opportunity. And when you're presented with an opportunity, you've got the choice of, do I take this opportunity? Do I go through this doorway, or do I choose to wait for another opportunity to come along? That's all tied up. So yes, a Dalit, a D, is a doorway, but it's more than just a doorway. It also has a demand on it of, do you choose to use this doorway or not? So the root meaning of Yehuda is the hand that moves, the hand like a doorway that swings back and forth. Because you think of the doorway on a tent, it would have swung back and forth because it was basically like a shepherd's pole, a line across with a piece of fabric hanging down. So it was a two-way door that you passed through. So the root of the word Judah, Yehuda, is this idea of a hand that moves, that makes way. And that's what Judah is called to be. So Judah went first. It led by example. I like to try and think of a lot of the tribes as, where would they be if you were in the army? Okay. I should have asked you before I did this, because I'm sure you've probably given me a lot more illustrations that I can't think of. But I like to think of somebody like, did you ever watch the film Private Benjamin?
Yeah.
And you had them jogging along, and there's one person calling it, I don't do 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 do, and then some goes do 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 do, and suddenly you've run 3 miles and you didn't notice it, because the momentum kept up, because you had your Judah, you had your Yehuda, you had your sergeant major calling out something that kept people going. Well, that's what I think of it. It's like a personal trainer or a sergeant major who is keeping everybody moving forward. Now, it's not a case of Judah went first, let them go first, let them be like the spies who went into the promised land. Judah has to be surrounded by everybody else. Otherwise, it's no good them being all full of gusto, can't wait to get out there, and then they turn around and find everybody else is half a mile back and they are highly susceptible to attack by the enemy. They've got their task is not to be out front. Their task is to get everybody moving together. They went first in the sense that they got people moving. Okay, it wasn't that they had to be at the front row, they got the front seats every time. It's that they went first, they were motivated to move forward. They were the hand that moved. They were saying, right, let's go, onward, charge. Okay, Judah cannot fight everyone's battles on their own. They are in a very precarious position. Okay, if Judah is out there on its own, then it hasn't rallied the troops. It hasn't done its job. Its job is not to be at the front. Its job is to rally everybody else, to be the motivators. Okay? So, Judah... Oh, why did... Oh, I'm not sure why I've done that. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, the other tribes need Judah to help bring them into line. And equally, without the other tribes, Judah will just reach burnout. We actually have within the tribe, within the hub, what we now call Joshua's Call, and they basically have these assignments. They go to places. We went down to Hill of Tara. That was where we first met Luke and Artie. It was Joshua's Call that organised that. That's part of our tribe of Judah, and went down there to blow shofars, because when you blow a shofar, it changes the atmosphere. Something happens to the sound. It's the same as whenever we worship. When you're worshipping in spirit, suddenly something happens, changes happen, tumors can be healed. Something just breaks where the enemy has been making somebody feel constricted. Suddenly they feel as if there's a release and a relief in the room. So that's what we would term part of the Judah calling. Okay, and say Joshua's Call is part of the Judah mantle. Okay, moving on now to the second tribe, Issachar, or Ish-Sakar, which means a man of hire. The root of this is the Samek Kaf. Samek, the letter here on this side, looks a wee bit like the picture of a shield, and that is a final kaf. It's very similar in appearance to the Dalit letter, but it comes down below the line, whereas that would be a Dalit if it cut off there at the level of the Samek. Okay, so those two letters. Samek is a shield, a hedge of protection for what is precious. Now it's interesting. A samek traditionally is thought of as being a shield, but you don't go around everywhere carrying a shield. Like when we have army troops, they get into their armored vehicle, then they get out to fight the battle. They maybe, when they're moving in formation, they have these large shields and they have them locked together to make sure that no bottles of fire are thrown at them or whatever as they move forward. But like if you were the average Israelite, you're not going to be walking around with this really heavy shield the whole time. You wouldn't be able to do any work. But your shield would have been multifunctional. You would have basically had something large that you could use if you were under attack, if you believed you were going to be under attack. But you didn't hold it while you were ploughing the field. You'd have set it down with your cheese sandwiches underneath it to stop the sun from getting on them during the day. So a samek wasn't just a hedge of protection or a shield for you. It was actually more often than not something that protected what was of value to you. And that's a very important lesson, because we can often think about a hedge of protection being purely for us. But the message of the Samek letter is that God protects what is of importance to us when we go about doing what he wants us to do for the kingdom. It's a case of we don't need to be worrying about our families. God will protect them while we are doing what he leads us into. Because like if you are worried about your sheep at night, you're never going to be able to sleep. You're going to be awake 24 hours a day taking care of them at night, and then thinking, or during the day, and then thinking at night, well, if I don't take care of them at night, then a wolf is going to come in and take them off. And like you can only go so many days without sleep. That is torture. So a samek is not just the idea of a shield that you carry. A samek is, have any of you ever been down south? You've probably possibly been to it. What's the place called? No, it was like the Kevin did it.
Oh,
Glendalough. Down at County Wicklow, there's a place called Glendalough, and it's absolutely beautiful. And there is a tall, thin tower. It's probably 25 feet high. Was it 25 meters high? I don't know. Probably.
It's like an obelisk.
Yes, it's like an obelisk. It's a tall, thin tower, and if you look at it, the entrance to it is maybe 15 feet high up in the air, and you think, well, that's not very practical. You need a doorway down at ground level. But the idea was you climbed up a ladder into it. The enemy would have had to have reached you up 15 feet up into the air, but below, in the area down below, was where you put all your possessions, all your food, everything that you needed to rely on in case you were going to be holed up in this obelisk, this tower for weeks on end. And you could survive there because it would have been impossible for them to have set light to it because it went straight down stone into the ground. Well, that's the idea of what a samek is. It's what is of value to you is kept safe in this tower, in this place that's protected, and it means you're living above it and you're not even worrying about what is in this place below. Okay, so I'd say it's more than just a shield. It's something that protects what is precious to you so that you can carry on with your everyday life. It's like when you have a safe in your house, and if you've got a gold watch that's been handed down through the generations, you can, or a will or something, precious papers, you put them in this place and you know they are safe there, so you can go about your everyday. You don't spend all your time sitting watching it in case somebody's going to break in and steal it. That's the idea of a samek. Okay.
Thou, O Lord, are a summit.
Sorry.
Thou, O Yah, are a summit to
Yes.
me.
Yes.
The glory and the lift of my head.
Yes, and
He protects me because I'm precious.
He protects you because you're precious, but he also protects what is of value to you, so that you can be about the Father's business. Okay.
Yeah.
The kaf are the palms of the hand. They represent the palms of the hand. They gently cover and protect, as in Yom Kippur, which Kippur is actually the word to cover. Okay. As in a kippur that you wear on your head. It basically is the word for a covering. Okay, but it's like the palm of your hand. Sorry,
it's very similar to samek too.
It is. Yeah.
Both are very protective and
Yes, that whole idea is in there. Okay, now the Samet Kaf is to cover, to watch, to keep, to dwell, like a security guard providing protection for those who've hired them. I would say it's a bit like the SAS that you call in when somebody needs protection. That's the idea of the Ish Sakar, because I don't like the idea of it being a man of hire, because it makes it sound like a
hireling.
Yes, or I can't think of the word on the top of my head at the moment, but the people that you call in
mercenaries.
Yeah, mercenaries. They're not just mercenaries, and that's why they were camped between the folds. They were keeping an idea of the sheep that the other people had.
Man of fire.
Yes.
I don't know if any of you have heard of the Gurkhas. They are
Yes.
actually mercenaries. They're not British soldiers. They're the
Right.
traditional.
Yeah.
But again, we shouldn't be afraid of the hire, because Yeshua's parable of the people that he were rented throughout the day, they were
Yes.
hired. It sounds like it was all about money, but we know there's rewards. We don't see it like that. So there is this faithfulness.
Yes.
That he
Yes.
rewards for faithfulness.
Yes.
Not in money. Well, how much profit and greedy can I get? That's not.
But it was a case of these were the ones who made themselves available for the other tribes if they needed them, and they took care of Zebulun's things. When Zebulun went away to earn money, they took care of so that Zebulun had something to come back to. So they would have taken care of that. Okay, so Issachar cared about what was precious to God, i.e. God's people and God's ways, i.e. the Torah. They cared about the Moedim, the appointed times and seasons. And it's really funny because like Victor and I head up House of Issachar within the hub, and Veronica is so prophetic. She's way more prophetic than me, and she kept on and on at me about, yes, but you need to know the times and seasons. And I'm thinking, looking blank at her as if, but God hasn't told me anything. All I'm interested in is finding out about the Moedim. And then it clicked with me, that's exactly what the times and seasons were that I was supposed to be doing. It's funny how God moves sometimes, isn't it?
Already there.
Despite we could just have a complete blind spot to something so obvious. Okay, Issachar care about unearthing and re-establishing the ancient paths. Their remit is relationship, not legalism.
Hallelujah.
Okay.
Nice guys.
Yeah. They care about Shabbat, returning to the covenant ways, as Shabbat means.
Isn't there
Okay.
a scripture somewhere that says that they were men of wisdom?
Yes. And women, probably.
Yeah. No, well, I'm not.
No, I'm joking.
I'm not talking about
I'm
the
teasing.
tribes.
No, you haven't. I'm
Talking
just
about the
teasing.
tribe.
I'm teasing. They care about what the Torah teaches because it's God's blueprint for his people. We don't have a temple to make sacrifices, for the temple was destroyed in AD 70, and Paul taught that circumcision was unnecessary for Gentile converts, but God hasn't had a personality change, and what pleased him and made his people holy and set apart has not changed. And it's something like Jacinta will testify, there aren't many classes that I take that I don't refer to the fact that we don't eat bacon and things like that. And there's one guy in the class, Mick, and I remember one day sitting at lunch with Mick, and Mick was munching his way through a huge plate full of cocktail sausages left over from a party the previous day, and he was eating with his mouth full and saying, Roz, he said, I love what you teach, and what can I do that will get me closer to God? And I'm thinking, well, maybe stop eating the sausages while you're... But anyway, like, I'm regularly talking about the fact that I don't. And yes, you can argue that anything is possible for us to eat.
Yeah.
But not everything was created as food.
That's right.
And certain things are not good for us.
Yeah.
Like, yes, maybe in my younger days I would have been more inclined to eat cockles and winkles and try frogs' legs and things like that, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily are the best foods for us to eat. Certain things weren't designed to be food. And maybe God in his wisdom knew ahead of time that with farming methods that there would come a time when it certainly wasn't good to eat some of these things with what's injected into them. But anyway, sorry, I'll get off my high horse. Anyway, Zebulun, the third tribe, comes from the root letters Zayin Beit. Okay, Zion is a sword. As God fights for us, the sword and the crown of the Messiah. And again, we've got the bait, the tent, the house, the home, the family. So when you put the two root letters together, you have Zibal, which means to dwell continuously, at least long enough to see a harvest. And the Zion, the sword, would not have been purely an instrument for fighting with. It would have been like a scythe, something you use to cut down grass, or it would have been like a mattock. A mattock was a small axe that you could have thrown at somebody if you were skilled, but equally you would use to cut up the soil. So it's think of the verse about turning the swords into plowshares. It's turning, it's having instruments. Zebulun is about having instruments that you can either use to fight, but also that you can use to clear ground. And when you clear ground, you are planning for the future, not just for yourself, because if you're a nomadic tribe, then you may move on to somewhere else, but you want to find that somebody else has had the forward thinking to clear ground and to plant seed so that you're going to reap the harvest. But then what you've left behind is for the next generation or the next people who move to where you were living as you
Very
move from
unselfish.
place. It's very unselfish.
Like digging a well when you're nomad.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Okay. Is Mum okay? Good. Okay. And Zibal is also the word for a golden harvest. It's provision for the house both now and in the future. They have vision to not merely be living hand to mouth. It's the idea of planting seed for that. Now, Zebulun, they were landowners, so they tended to not just move around as frequently as the nomads, the tribe of Zebulun. They were farmers, they were shopkeepers, they were traders out in the marketplace. We might use the idea kingdom entrepreneurs. And there's a great need for kingdom entrepreneurs, people who have an idea and they go by and they then see amazing increase, but they're feeding it back into producing kingdom rather than just purely doing it for themselves. But of course they need to earn a living as well out of it. Okay. CAP is another one. Christians Against Poverty would be an example of Zebulun, tribe of Zebulun, that idea of you're not just going to live from hand to mouth, like the idea of not just giving somebody a fish, teaching them how to fish. It creates a village, that idea. We've got a guy, William Abraham, who's part of the tribe, and he heads up an organisation called the 7,000, and they do Zoom meetings every Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock for an hour. And he was a lawyer in London and in Canada, and he's got a big ministry. As I say, he's part of our team with the hub, but it's the idea of he's trying to come up with an alternative system for finance with what's going on in the world today. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. I would love to, but I just don't have the head capacity to take much more on than this is where God has placed me with the Hebrew. And they have great social skills and understand how business and trade operate. They have business acumen to encourage and teach others who are so focused on their ministry that their income is floundering. So they come in with good ideas. If you're of the tribe of Zebulun, that sort of idea. Okay. Now, Zebulun and Issachar had a long-standing arrangement that Zebulun would go out and bring food to the table, while Issachar would look after the home. So that Zebulun, they were the SAS, if you want to call it, or the Gurkhas. They were the ones who could be relied on to look after the home so that Zebulun could concentrate on trade and travel, and together they would find the treasures of the sand. And they are happy to bring their experience, their wisdom, their practical funding even to the table, but they know that their expertise does not lie in searching the Torah, and that is why they work so closely with Issachar. And it's funny.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, William Abraham, who's this guy who heads up the 7,000 that we know in the hub, he just doesn't have capacity for what I teach, but he loves to hear it, and he'll come to me and say, what's the Hebrew word for this? How does that play out? And it's how they work together. So when you look at the first three tribes that we've been looking at, you've got Judah or Yehuda going first in the sense of motivating everybody and saying, right, we need to move forwards. They're motivating everybody else. They're motivating Issachar to get up and actually see, what does Torah say? What does the teaching say? What should we be following? What should our blueprint be to move forward even today? But then we also need those with a bit of business acumen such as the Zebulons, to actually be providing some funding.
Pay for a petrol.
Yeah, doing that, but not just being relied upon as if, well, they've got all the money, let's all be friends with, say, like, I'll say, right, okay, say you're a Zebulon, you've got wealth, everybody comes to you, you're going to get very tired after a short length of time because everybody's coming to you hinting at the fact that they've got financial needs. What you would be doing is actually putting into place teaching seminars on how to use your money carefully, or maybe providing a seed grant to motivate people that they then find a way to use their skills, but they're also bringing in revenue, so they're creating longevity and creating kingdom for the future. But it's how it's worked together and being given the space to stand back, not just being seen as a money pit or being seen as, well, you're the hard force, you're going to protect us so we can do whatever we want. You've also got to train people that they know how to protect themselves and that everybody moves forward together. That's the idea of the
All the
tribes.
tribes need to have the same vision.
Yes, absolutely.
Without that,
Absolutely.
we'll get in.
But not everybody has the skills to search out Torah or to search out the business acumen.
But the
And it's
vision will be
running-
the same.
Absolutely.
The higher vision will be the same.
Totally to create kingdom. Okay. Yes. So, and what are the treasures of the sand? Deuteronomy 33 verses 18 to 19 of Zebulun, it said, "Rejoice, Zebulun, in your interests abroad, and Issachar in your tents at home. They will call the peoples to the mountain, Mount Carmel. There they will offer sacrifices of righteousness," that's that word Zedek, "for they will draw out the abundance of the seas and the hidden treasures of the sand." What are the treasures of the sand? Okay. Now, one idea is that it could be the techelet, that cobalt blue dye used on the high priest's garments and on the tapestry in the tabernacle and on the tzitzit tassels. Could be that. Or is it a reference to the gold and silver found on the riverbeds and the ocean floor? Or could it be the pearls and corals of the deep? Or maybe, sorry?
None of the above.
Can you tell by the tone of my voice?
Yeah. No, I feel the red herring.
You think there's one there, yeah? Or could it be the treasure lost at sea as ancient vessels ran aground? What do you think?
I think the last one's warm. Very
Okay.
warm.
Now, this is only my theory, okay? My theory is, could it be the dreams that God has for his children, which are as numerous as the sand on the seashore?
Sure. That's nice.
Yeah.
Very poetic.
What about us that are made of sand?
We are made of sand, yeah. And actually, sand is always a reference to the children of Abraham. Abraham, they will be as numerous as the sand on the seashore. And that's why you have the challah bread, and it's studied with the sultanas to show like the raisins all throughout the world. So, but as I say, I just have a feeling that it could be that together people need to find the dream and the vision that God's placed in their heart, and they'll only move forward when they've got an understanding of God's ways of doing things, but also how to use their resources wisely. Because you see so many young people, they get into debt, and it means they're not in the right position then to move into something that becomes available, an opportunity when the time comes around, because they're in that debt. And it's so key that the tribe of Zebulun is allowed in the church to show people how to use their money wisely, and also an understanding of God's ways of Torah. So,
Sand
Is there a
component of glass?
Sorry?
That's
yeah, sand is made of glass, and it's fascinating. I've seen photographs of it up close, and you'll think it was the most precious 4 or 5 carat jewel when you see just a tiny bit of
It's
glass
magnified,
over sand. Yeah.
And it's just not the same, it's all different.
Yes.
It's all a variety, all shapes, sizes, colours as well.
What about oil? Black oil.
Could be. That's another possibility. But as I say, I just like to think that I think there's more potential in the dreams that God has for his children than there is in all of the wealth that has been discovered.
On the back end, where I'm coming from with that, it's the latter one, where it's the connection we talked about Zabal harvest.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole thing about the beauty of the gospel is the harvest of the nation, not
Yes.
just Israel. So mix the Zabal harvest with the trading ports,
Yes.
which is the trade between the nations. Now
Yes.
you're talking about the wealth of all the nations. All these peoples their wealth being brought into the seaport.
Yeah.
Zebulun was where. So that's what I'm saying, the connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is that.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
now to go back to IT, someone said about crystals. They discovered back in the 70s. Remember the very first Superman movie?
Yeah.
The very first Superman movie. And he goes into his Fortress of Solitude. He's got his bag of crystals and he puts that crystal in. And his dad comes up. And his dad's living consciousness. They discovered that crystals are the best form of data storage. So when we were still dealing with discs, Hitachi developed crystals. Remember the CD that came out? The first CD and the first DVD run? And it was in computer games and you had to go to the arcade. Now everybody got CDs.
Yeah.
But we've gone to petabyte, nanobyte, we've gone to all AI now is running off crystals. It's a faster form of data transfer and you can store much more. But you're looking to put AI into it, consciousness into it. So.
And I hate AI because it suggests there's no absolute truth. It's
the counterfeit. AI is the counterfeit.
AI is preaching gospel.
Do you think?
I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm living in an age where now AI is writing sermons and mixing different theologies together, and people are listening to AI sermons more than real preachers now. We're debunked.
Yes.
Do you guys know what a flow chart is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I have a background in computing, yeah. All AI is a flow chart, yeah.
And
But
if
you can
this,
start with a
then
simple
this.
one,
Yeah.
but the more paths and the more branches you add to it, the more complex the AI is,
Yes.
yeah. And or the more complex the program is, yeah. And that is all AI is, but it is on such a level, and in the processors there you could have trillions of transistors that can create paths, and because you've got that processing power, you can create the most complex flow charts, and it can be done in an instant.
Can we bring it back now?
Right. Okay.
Thank you, sister.
Right. It is currently 10 to 1. Can I suggest if Victor and one other person, one man, would mind going up to bring down the 2 slow cookers of soup? And I will just talk for another 5 minutes until they come down, and then we can resume after lunch. How does that sound for a plan? That do? Okay. So Victor, would
The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.
I know, but I know it's hard to be listening to
That's
somebody
good.
rambling on. Okay.
Thank you, Roz. Thank you so much.
Okay. In fact, will we all just break up now, because it means you can stretch your legs and go to the loo if you want before we serve lunch, and we'll come back after that. And then
That's
won't miss
better.
anything.
That's better because I can cut the AI off on the end of this video.
Okay.
I can stop it now.